It's not just another day in your life. Things are changing for the better. At Comcast, we see those changes, and we're thinking about how we use technology today to live, work, learn, and play. And we're building for the future now, so we're better prepared for the wants and needs of tomorrow. That's why Comcast is rolling out multi-gig internet speeds to more than 50 million homes and businesses before the end of 2025, making our already industry-leading network even faster, smarter, greener, and more reliable. Over the decades, Comcast has been your partner, working hard to serve your community, and will continue to be your partner. We're expanding our gigabits so you can enjoy the tiny bits that matter most.
I'm Brandon Jones, host of the Teen Mental Health podcast, It Is Not Your Fault.
And I'm Lambert Fisher, family therapist and host of the Diversity Dude podcast.
We're not always going to be all right, and that's what makes us human. Often, when we're in pain or even thinking of suicide, we may not want others to know, but you'll feel better if you talk to someone. And you can do that safely and anonymously.
We can recognize when loved ones are not okay. They bottle up, they isolate, they're angry.
That's why we want you to know about 988, Minnesota Lifeline, for someone you're worried about or even yourself.
Anyone with an emotional or mental health related need can call, chat, or text 988 for free, confidential support. You can connect with 988 to discuss difficulty with money, relationships, anxiety, your job, concerns about drug or alcohol use, grief support, figuring out your identity, and more.
You don't even have to identify yourself or the person you're calling about, and no insurance is needed.
988 is available 24/7 year-round and can interpret in more than 200 languages.
So take a brave step. Call or text 988.
Or chat at 988lifeline.org. You don't have to do this alone.
It's Not Your Fault is a podcast for parents, caregivers, and young people navigating the world and its challenges. Here's your host, Brandon Jones.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome back to another installment of It's Not Your Fault, a Teen Mental Health podcast. I am your host, Brandon Jones. And on today's episode, we are talking about the impact of phones have on teens and their anxiety. Phones, devices, the internet, social media have been all the rage when it comes to adolescents and their mental and emotional health. A lot of school districts this year have implemented policies that have restricted phone use in schools and classrooms. And it's impacting folks all across the board. There are a lot of mixed views on these policies. I've heard a lot of parents who are in favor of this. They believe that these phones and these devices do not belong in schools. And then I've also heard alternative perspectives where people believe that these devices are part of our society and they should be in the schools, but the schools should figure out ways to integrate them and to leverage them in the learning process, which is a pretty radical idea compared to where we have this majority who's saying no schools and no phones in the schools. I myself kind of fall somewhere in the middle of that. I think that no phones in the schools makes a lot of sense. I think we have a lot of data and a lot of both actual data and anecdotal data that proves that we should reconsider how phones are showing up in school buildings. But I also want to be realistic and say, hey, we are in 2024 going into 2025. And as we continue to move forward in society, these things are hard to remove, especially after we've had them ingrained for so long within our social dynamic, especially for young people, where we have some young people who all they know is a life with phones. It's a very hard thing to just completely get away with. As a father, this is something that has hit home for myself as I have a child who's going into middle school this year. And she just got her first cell phone about 3 months ago. And I've seen the difference in how she socially interacts now that she has a phone. And I know that it will become a problem if she's able to have her phone throughout the school day. I can see it now that she will miss hearing what teachers are saying or lessons are playing or engagements with students because she is engaged in what's happening on her phone. And she's not even on social media yet. She has no social media accounts at all, but the phone is just such an addictive dynamic that it is playing a huge role. But that addiction is leading to some of the major concerns we have with young people when it comes to anxiety. And that's what we're going to talk about today on today's podcast. So, with the new school year in full swing, many parents are concerned about the increasing levels of anxiety amongst teens. One significant factor that's contributing to the rise of this presence is the smartphone. The smartphone, this device that we have, is connected. It's linked. There's a correlation between the cell phones and anxiety that our children are experiencing. So with these devices, it offers many benefits. As we know, we can have access to our kids at any time to check in. That improves the level of comfortability and safety to a certain extent. It also gives an access to information. So if your kid needs something, it can help with language barriers. It can help with ability statuses. There are benefits to the cell phones, but it also has the detraction of distraction. It can take away from a lot of what a young person needs to succeed in an academic standpoint, from an academic standpoint. So here we are. And now that these phones are implemented in the lives of so many people, it is causing huge issues. So I wanted to talk about first how the phones contribute to anxiety. Then I want to talk about how what parents and caregivers can do about it. So the how and the what is what we're going to talk about today on today's episode. So let me get started with how the phones are contributing to teen anxiety. The first thing is what we call social media pressure. Social media pressure. So there's this constant comparison that happens on social media. It's the I versus the others that we're looking at here, what the individual sees and how the individual measures up against society and what's being shown. And the tricky thing about this is it's a process that happens psychologically for so many people to each other. So people start to present certain elements of themselves or certain lifestyles, or they look at influencers and companies who market certain things to provide a desire for what your life could be like, and that feeds the self-esteem and the confidence and the courage of an individual. And this can be very detrimental to a kid, because if you think about a young person, they don't always have all the resources. They don't even always have all the connections. Their brains aren't even close to being fully developed yet. So they're still figuring out life as they go, and the struggle is very real. So that consistent comparison is a huge struggle point for so many young people. There's also this thing that's called FOMO. I'm sure that there's more cooler names than FOMO at the moment, but FOMO, the fear of missing out, is a never-ending kind of stream of what's going on. There's all these updates, and there's more information, and there's new people and new lingo and new clothing and new social statuses. All these things that are happening, no one wants to miss out. So there's this desire to stay connected and to continue to check and to keep going. I myself even struggle with this when it comes to my email, because I want to make sure that, I'm staying connected to the folks I do business with. I'm staying connected to my friends. I'm staying connected to making sure that any updates of like the stuff that my children are in, I'm updated from their school to their social activities. So there's even a fear of missing out that we kind of associate ourselves with the parents as well with our devices. But imagine when your world is built around some of the things that are happening online, that fear of missing out is a strong motivational factor to focus in on that phone. It can drive up that anxiety for a young person. The second contributing factor to teen anxiety with phones is cyberbullying. We've heard a lot about cyberbullying over the years. I really think that this has morphed into so many different types of formations that we have things like trolling, we have leaks that happen, we have people being exposed or outed. We have people who directly get bullied and have negative things said to them. We have people who get spammed. We have people who get doxxed online. There's all these things. And if you don't know these terms, I highly recommend you start doing some Googling and getting familiar with what these terms mean, because they're all forms of cyberbullying. There's this consistent and persistent harassment that can take place and does take place online. One of the ones that I see a lot with teams are videos of exposing them, like with fights or arguments. You may have two teams with a conflict, and then you have a series of teams who are filming it, and then they want to show the exclusive video of what happened. And then even after the incident takes place, there's a social conversation that takes place after the incident. So let's say there's a fight, And whether your kid won or lost the fight, now it's the sharing of the fight and the commentary and who won and who's on whose side or who did it right or who did it wrong. And that continues to play on and play on. And don't even let those things go viral, where it gets beyond just the social circle of the school or that student body. It can become a really dangerous space for an individual to be a part of. And then there's the anonymous threats, right? The exposure, the people behind keyboards. A lot of times we think about predators and things of that nature, but there's also the folks that who are like, oh, I know where you live, or I'm going to put your number online, or, oh, I seen these pictures of you, we're going to make fun of you. There's a lot of this like hidden threat that ends up taking place on social media that also drives up that anxiety. One that I think we don't think about enough is the disrupted sleep patterns. So when you're online or you want to be online, you start to lose track of time. You start to lose the things that you need for your body to rest because we're so tied into what's happening online. There are people who stream online 24 hours. Like that takes a lot of your energy and a lot of your focus. And it's hard for you to get up and go to school the next day if you've been online at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, engaging with folks from all over the world. So sleep patterns, blue light exposure, and that late night usage is just one thing that puts a huge strain on individuals. And that does affect your body and it does affect your nervous system, which ultimately will affect your anxiety. Information overload is another one. That's another contributing factor where there's so much going on that you can't even hold on to it all. You start to miss things or you start to misconstrue things and get things confused because you're getting so much information. It's hard for you to keep a track mind and keep yourself on a particular thought process because your brain is being pulled in so many different directions that it gets overwhelming. That could be with negative things, that could be with positive things, and it also can be with notifications where you're always getting notified of what's happening, what's going on. So those are a few of the pressures that come with social media that are important for parents to know. Let's talk about what parents and caregivers can do. I always like to give tips on this podcast for folks to know what can I do about what's going on and how can I help my young person or the young people in my life succeed and move forward. The first thing is set strong boundaries. We talk about this a lot on the podcast, but it's so important. And it's hard to set those boundaries when these habits have already been set in motion, but you still got to make an effort. Create phone-free zones. This is what they're doing in a lot of schools. There's phone-free zones and there's phone usage zones. But in your home, you can do the same thing. You can set time frames. You can set, there's no phones at the dinner table or there's no phones when we're all together sharing space. But when you're in your room, you can use your phone or whatever the case may be. You got to set these limits. In my household, we make sure we have family dinner and there's no devices most of the time. Sometimes if they're doing really well and things are kind of lax on like a Saturday or whatnot, I'll allow some screen time at the dinner table. But for the most part, we sit, we talk. That's our time together. Everybody has an expectation and they know there's no phones, there's no iPads, and that's for the parents too. There's no checking of email, there's no checking of your Facebook. Get off your phone. Let's spend some time together. And same thing for family game night. The second thing that parents and caregivers can do, encourage open communication. Ask questions. If you hear a term, what does that mean? What does that mean to you? Now, your kid's probably going to say they don't know. They don't want to talk to you about this stuff, but you still need to pry. You still need to try and create that open communication channel as best as possible so that your children know that you're paying attention and they know that you're a safe person that they can talk to about things and be supportive. It's hard to get away from these devices. So leaning into them is probably one of the best things you can do instead of trying to encourage them away from what's happening. Number 2, promote healthy habits. So prioritize sleep. Make sure that you're engaging in sleep. Sometimes you have to take devices away to make sure that they're actually engaging in sleep. And also know that it's not just the phone. There's all the devices, the PlayStation, the game console, the computer, the tablets. They're connected to all those things. So sometimes you have to remove or restrict the access points in order for the young people to get the healthy amount of sleep or eating or grooming that they need. So promoting those healthy habits is very, very much encouraged. Encouraging offline activities is huge as well. Every Friday night we have family night where we play games or watch a movie, and we just force ourselves not to be in our individual devices, but let's spend some collective time together. And then a big one that you're going to hear a lot more about on this channel and others podcast is education around digital well-being. This is a thing This is a new focus, is digital well-being, teaching critical thinking skills, and also digital detoxing and allowing people to have time away from devices is a huge beneficial factor as we move forward. And then just always lead by example as a parent and find time to balance the online and the offline life. Both of those things are reality, and both of those things are important to our society today. So we should have a balance between both. So those are some of the things that are causing anxiety and some of the tips that you can do as a parent or caregiver to help. And if you're a young person listening to this podcast, you can implement those things as well, and engaging with other teens and parents and caregivers to make sure that you're being safe and healthy online to the best of your ability. So that's going to wrap up today's podcast. Quick and easy, just some quick hitters, some things to think about as we gear back into school and we learn a lot about how these devices are playing a role with anxiety in teens. So if you like that, you want to check us out in a few other places. The first place you can check us out is on our Facebook page. You can just go to the Facebook search bar, type in It's Not Your Fault Podcast. You can find us. I wrote an article about this. You can find the article there. You can also find other great tips and content that can help you engage with your teen. And if you're a teen, help you engage with your peers on Facebook. The next place you can check us out is at my website. So if you have any questions or anything for me directly, you can just get to my personal website, www.jegna.org. That's jegna.org, where you can get access to me directly, and I'll answer any questions or help out with anything that you may have. And then the third place you can check us out is at ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com. That's ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com. If you like this podcast, you'll love the others on the network. We have a lot of constructive things there, so definitely check us out, ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com. So that's it for today, folks. Again, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Check us out at a later date, and we'll see you then. Be sure to be well, be constructive, and be positive. We'll see you next time. Peace.
To check out previous episodes of It's Not Your Fault, or to learn more about Brandon Jones, log on to ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com.
You know Shaletta makes you laugh, but did you know Shaletta Brundage can also make you think and boost your business? Media personality, activist, and comedian Shaletta Brundage founded Shaletta Makes Me Laugh to celebrate and share the best of Black culture. It's a podcasting platform. You can download 10 weekly podcasts hosted by African-American subject experts at ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com is also a production house, creating broadcast-quality commercial content. And Shaletta and her team of storytellers create powerful promotional campaigns to get businesses the brand awareness they're looking for. Some of Minnesota's top businesses trust Shaletta, and you can too. Get out the word about your events and products and get in front of communities of color with ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com. She's got the power to help your business.
If you live in an older home, it may contain lead-based paint on walls, woodwork, and windows. Even more bad news, lead exposure can be dangerous to young children and impact their brain development. And now, the good news. Hennepin County will fix lead hazards in your home at no cost to you.
We were worried because of the paint in the windows in the bedroom. They were peeling and chipping, and we know that when paint peels and chips and it looks a certain way, that's possibly lead. We were worried for our children more so than anything.
Eligible homes can qualify for up to $15,000 in upgrades. You may even qualify for new energy-efficient windows. Don't worry, Hennepin County has a trusted list of pre-approved contractors. You won't even have to find companies with correct licenses or certifications.
I've just done a test and it's positive. So we know that this is lead-based paint, and then we know it's a hazard because it's creating dust every time this window moves and opens. And if you look in here, that's just full of lead paint chips.
You won't have to stay with your cousin while you're getting the lead out. Hennepin County even pays for you and your family to stay in a hotel while the work is underway. The last good news is how easy it is to apply. Just go to hennepin.us/lead control to get started.
I'm really happy with the program. We can go to bed knowing that our children are safe.
That's hennepin.us/lead control. Tell your friends about it.
I'm Brandon Jones, host of the Teen Mental Health Podcast, It Is Not Your Fault.
And I'm Lambert Fisher, family therapist and host of the Diversity Dude podcast.
We're not always going to be all right, and that's what makes us human. Often, when we're in pain or even thinking of suicide, we may not want others to know. But you'll feel better if you talk to someone, and you can do that safely and anonymously.
We can recognize when loved ones are not okay. They bottle up, they isolate, they're angry.
That's why we want you to know about 988 Minnesota Lifeline for someone you're worried about or even yourself.
Anyone with an emotional or mental health related need can call, chat, or text 988 for free, confidential support. You can connect with 988 to discuss difficulty with money, relationships, anxiety, your job, concerns about drug or alcohol use, grief support, figuring out your identity, and more.
You don't even have to identify yourself or the person you're calling about, and no insurance is needed.
988 is available 24/7 year-round and can interpret in more than 200 languages.
So take a brave step. Call or text 988.
Or chat at 988lifeline.org. You don't have to do this alone.